Students need to understand that if they don't know something, they can ask the professor about this.
Sometimes our international students are a little more hesitant to ask those questions, whether it be a language barrier or whether it be feeling like they can't quite articulate the question that they really want to ask to get the answer that they need.
That is very hard because you're right, coming from a high power context society where it is not encouraged to raise your hand to ask a question.
I do think that there are those layers as well of trying to understand what is the cultural norm here.
In the United States, that's not only expected, but it's encouraged.
It's much more conversational and much more flat power.
As a faculty member, I appreciate when the students tell me, I'm not sure I understand this assignment. Could you explain it with me? I feel like at least if somebody is trying to understand it and trying to work towards it, you can help them. And that's your role as an instructor, to assist them with that.
I hope that that gives people permission to say, not only is it not wrong or bad, but it's encouraged for people to contribute, to say, I don't get it, I have something different, that's not how I experienced in my lived experience, or that's not how I understand it from my cultural context or from my society perspective. And that helps us to all learn. That helps make something richer and more beautiful.
This shows respect for the professor and his class. If you're asking questions, it shows that you are engaged with the class, the materials, and the professor.
Take advantage of opportunities for questions, even if it's just one question. I used to, when I went to conferences for the first few years, just make a point to say, I'd like to ask one question when we come to the question and answer part of the conference, just to get used to the idea of asking questions in a public setting. So overcoming that.
Advocating for yourself. So many domestic American students are very good at asking for extensions or asking for help, coming to office hours and talking to the professor. So I think these are some habits that international students can develop to help fill their needs when they have additional support that they need, to ask for help, because that's what professors are here for.
Practice will hopefully help you get over that nervousness.
I think the other pieces is just, if not comfortable talking to an instructor, sending an email and sharing that, I would like to ask questions, but I want to make sure that it's okay. Here are my questions. And really just kind of reminding people, like, I want to be successful in my courses. I want to be successful as a student here. And honestly, just asking for any kind of support. I think that our international students will be surprised to see how much support they have on this campus.
Developing habits for scheduling time to read and write independently.
Be prepared when you go to class. I take a lot of notes myself, even in meetings today. I take a lot of notes because you might think you're understanding something, but writing it down helps me both get more detail and then also be able to review the things I've heard and see how they fit together.
A big thing that internationals can do is start to really understand the culture of the university, understand what is acceptable, what is not.
In the US at FSU, we have a very strict enforcement of plagiarism and cheating. Study the code of conduct very clearly so that you don't get entangled with this trap.
When they talk about someone else's work and they paraphrase it, even if they use their own words to talk about this other person's work, if they're summarizing or paraphrasing those ideas, that must be cited.
Sometimes you might be tempted because the homework is difficult and so on. But in that case, I recommend you to go to office hours. Often you can go to office hours to talk about the solution with the professor or the TAs, and you often get some hints about the homework solutions.
When students come into CGE, we give them campus maps and try to instruct them to where to go to meet with their academic advisor so that they can get started with their academic side of being in the US and at FSU. If there are student groups related to what country they're from, so we try to set them up with contact information for getting connected with other students like them that are from their home country.
One of the things they can do is learn from their peers, form study groups, for example.
We would get together to study, we would help each other practice presentations and get feedback from somebody else.
It's likely that if they struggle with the material or have difficulty understanding readings or class lectures, other students have the same difficulties. And by forming groups, even informal study groups, where you talk about what you read, talk about the assignments, and talk about what you covered in class, that can really help to consolidate your understanding.
Not just students from your country, but also from other countries and from the United States, so that you can have a good group of students that are working towards the same goal, even if it's in different programs, but that you can support each other.
And I think by working together, there is a synergy effect where your understanding is better when talking with other people and discussing the assignments with them.
I would definitely encourage our international students to step out of that comfort zone and try their best to engage with the domestic students.
Find other places on campus and other pockets, and they break out of that safe space to try new things and to come to things on campus, or to raise their hand to sign up for stuff and participate, or sometimes to just walk into a building and say, what do you do here? I want to learn more. What things can I do in this space?
Choose an event where you wouldn't normally go, and maybe you go and stretch that comfort just a little bit, and you go and make it an educational moment, make it a social experience.
And everything that we do in the center is available to all students.
False impression that in computer science you don't need to know a lot about English, but actually it's not correct. According to some research, the most important factor to succeed in your career is English. So I strongly recommend that you invest in your English. It might be the best investment you have for your career success.
I work with international students in the English for Academic Purposes program, and sometimes I will notice that the students who just arrived in the United States and enroll either academic writing or spoken English courses from the very beginning are making progress faster because they are working on those language skills in the first semester or the first year when they're here. As opposed to maybe waiting a year or two and then say, oh, I think I need to work on my English. I would recommend that you start early on if you need to work on your language skills.
We have a lot of resources in the university. For example, we have the Center of Intensive English Study, but many international students don't know about Say Yes. So I would strongly recommend Say Yes to international students.
And about English, the more you use it, just be eager, look out for opportunities, interact with people, go to coffee hours.
Any opportunity to engage in conversational English, whether it's the more formal conversational English sessions that we have, or if it's just putting yourself in a social setting.
Most Americans don't really judge you based on your English proficiency. They are actually very aware that English is not your first language. Actually, most Americans do not know a second language, and they appreciate that you do know the errors that you make, the mistakes you make. That's the process. That's the process of learning, and you should embrace that and use it as an experience. You're not being evaluated or judged. You're here to learn.
Don't count yourself out. We want you to come and participate and take advantage, because the more variety of folks that we can have in any program, the more that our domestic students can learn from international students, and vice versa. That international students get to really understand the experience of being a domestic or American student.